thrilled to be here. I was asked by my friend Mike Bassage to come and play a few songs, and he said that the focus was that it's been a hard year, but with our principles, we can get through it as long as you stick with that. And when he asked me to do it, I immediately thought of two songs that have come back again and again in my life, and both of them are by Bob Dylan. One of them is A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, that he wrote early in his career, and he kind of lists a lot of things like he does in a lot of his songs, and his idea is that, you know, this is gonna be hard, and it's gonna kind of rock the boat a little bit. And the other song is Ring Them Bells, and it's another song where he lists lots of things, but what he lands on is very different. He kind of celebrates the good and the bad, and he takes them in stride. And so those are the two songs I picked, and I'll start with Hard Rain's Gonna Fall now, and I'll play the other one at the end of the service.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Society on this last Sunday of 2024, December 29th. Welcome to each of you. It is good to be together and to gather together as a community of seekers in this place where we commit ourselves to live out our common values, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of a world community of peace, safety, and justice for all beings. As we gather, let us attend to the need to walk humbly upon this land, the traditional homeland of the Dakota Iote, and in particular of the Wapakatu tribe, who still call this place home. Recognizing the history of genocide and colonialism and their right to justice and self-determination, may we be good allies, advocates, and partners with them. First Unitarian Society is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. My name is Shelley Schreffler. I've been a member at FUS for 35 years and am part of a team supporting our interim minister this year. I'm joined today by members of the FUS Archive Committee, Phil Duran, Mickey Morissette, Wendy Jerome, Martha Hardestay, and Adele Hansen. The Eclectics and special musical guest Mike Wolter will be sharing their music with us, and I want to recognize the leadership support of Paul, Valerie, Julie, and our amazing media team. So thank you to you all. There's no family programming or ethical explorers today, but please make use of the multi-generational space in the room up in the front. There's also childcare for the littlest ones down the hall and to the left as you exit. As the season of being indoors is upon us, we've created a space for those who wish to be masked and to be around those who are masked. And you can find that right in front of the video sound area in the back. I invite you, wherever you are, including those of you online, to take a moment to welcome the morning and to greet those around you, or get up to get a Grace Songbook if you would like, near the back. This morning's opening words are a poem entitled Remedial Dimension Survival Plan, Part 1 by Deepa Phillips. Light your candles, practice your skills, order your medicines, pack your we out bag, put a little cash aside, save some seeds, learn your self-defense, increase your stamina, memorize folks' numbers, strategize your plans, call upon your history, prepare your long game, learn and share, return to your library, live your praxis, parent your babies, pray your hardest, make your art, soak in music, document your stories. Run yourself salt baths. Dance until sweaty. Let your tears flow. Be soft with yourself. Dig your hands into the earth. Wash yourself in seawater. Walk amidst grandmother trees. Root yourself there. Kiss your lover. Breathe from your belly. Sit on your cushion. Remember your laughter. Remind yourself who you are. Call your family. Gather your team. Get with your people. Lean on your ancestors. Do your work now. Do your work now. Each week when we gather, we light our chalice as a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. We are led by its light, inspired by its flame, and drawn together by its warmth. We often light our chalice using words expressing our values and aspirations. Today, we'll use FUS's second aspiration. As Paul lights the flame, please join me in reading the words on the screen. We aspire to make the change we need for a more just, compassionate, and peaceful world. And now that our chalice is lit, let us share in reading our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I now invite you to stand in body or in spirit as we sing For All That Is Our Life, number 128 in the gray hymnals, and the words will be on the screen.
First Unitarian Society is a congregational humanist community. We are here for each other, our neighbors, and our planet, and one manifestation of that is our caring team. If at any time there's something happening in your life that you'd like to share with our team or with this community, please send a note to joysandconcerns@firstunitarian.org. You can also do this using the contact form on our website. After the assembly, you're invited to stop by the card basket downstairs to send a note to folks who are unable to attend assembly and/or people we mention in Joys and Concerns. We have not received any specific joys or concerns to share this morning, and yet I know that we are all aware of those who need a little extra support or affirmation. That we may stay in touch with our own humanity, remember those who are suffering, and remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness, let's take some time in silence to reflect on the human experience, the joys, sorrows, and milestones in our lives, in the lives of those we love, and in the lives of all beings everywhere. A moment of silence.
I'd like to just kind of give you a feeling for what's going to happen with all of these people that are coming up here. They're going to be reading 4 different readings from Unitarian voices, plus a time for your reflection on their ideas. The following is an excerpt from an address entitled "A Discourse to Commemorate the Rendition of Thomas Sims." And this was given by Theodore Parker, April 12, 1852, during the great controversy over passage of the Fugitive Slave Act. When Thomas Sims was unlawfully seized and detained in custody against the law, the governor of Massachusetts was in Boston. The legislature was in session. It seems to me that it was their duty to protect the man, to enforce the laws of the state, but they did no such thing. There was in Boston a large number of crafty, rich, designing, and respectable men who wanted a man kidnapped in Boston and sent into slavery. They wanted that for the basest of purposes, for the sake of money. They wanted the name of it, the reputation of kidnapping a man. They protected the kidnappers, foreign and domestic, egged them on, feasted them. It's been said that 1,500 men volunteered to escort their victim out of the state, that some of them are rich men. I think the majority of the middle class of men were in favor of freedom. But in Boston, what is a man without money? And if he has money, who cares how base his character may be? You demand moral character only of a clergyman. Some of the richest men were strongly in favor of freedom, but alas, not many, and for the most part, they were silent.
Theodore Parker today is considered to be one of the very leading lights in the history of Unitarian Universalist thought, but it was not always this way. Early in his preaching career, Parker created controversy, earned infamy, by openly questioning the relevance of the Christian tradition and of the Bible itself. This was at a time when Unitarianism still considered itself to be a branch of Christian thinking, and which routinely turned to the Bible and theistic concepts in its teachings. As a result of his provocative sermons, Parker was excluded from pulpits, even Unitarian pulpits, throughout the Boston area where he lived at the time. And in some ways, the controversy drove the American Unitarian Association to adopt a creed, albeit a liberal creed, in order to define itself in contrast to Parker's vision. Nonetheless, Parker persisted in speaking his truth and in gathering congregations of fellow thinkers to his side. The discord between Parker and the Unitarian establishment was not limited solely to philosophical matters about what Unitarianism meant or stood for. Parker, as a minister, was outspoken in his opposition to slavery and in support of the abolitionist movement that was gaining steam in part because after the Mexican War in the 1840s, Congress took a number of actions, including the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, to paper over differences between free and slave states. The act required officials in all states, free or slave, to actively assist in the capture and return of fugitive slaves to their purported owners. This predictably caused outrage among many in the North to consider that their local officials would be conscripted into this effort. This was the context behind Parker's words, which we heard a moment ago. Thomas Sims was captured on the streets of Boston, imprisoned, and ultimately sent to slavery. It was an outrage which Parker could not abide. It is perhaps next to impossible for Americans today to comprehend what it may have been like to live in a country where millions of Americans of African heritage were enslaved from birth to death, generation after generation, subjected to forced labor, cruel punishment, sexual assault, and degradation of every character, every day. American chattel slavery was one of history's most vile expressions of white supremacy, particularly offensive when it occurred in a nation purportedly committed to the concepts of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is mind-boggling to imagine the courage that people like Parker and his contemporaries must have exhibited in order to so publicly condemn a system of thought and action which, even in his own day, had been rooted in this society for centuries, and to do so in the face of opposition from his own fellow Unitarians. And yet he did, and he is inspirational to us today, in no small part for this reason. Personally, I am reminded of Parker's understanding of this crisis because, in a way, we are experiencing a faint echo of the same phenomenon today regarding transgender Americans. In state after state, legislators in recent years have rushed to enact laws which restrict what bathrooms transgender people may use, what sports teams, if any, they may participate in, what changes, if any, they may make to their identity documents, and what forms of medical treatment they may or may not seek. All of these laws are currently forcing transgender people and their families to consider the need to flee from these states into states like Minnesota, which have set themselves up as sanctuaries for refugees coming from other parts of our own country to avoid the injustice of other states' laws. And in less than a month, the nation will be governed by an administration purportedly committed to enacting some of these same restrictions at the federal level, potentially affecting us all. Like Parker, we too may see our local authorities in Minnesota compelled to act as agents of oppression. To be clear, I am not suggesting that the crisis facing many transgender Americans in the 21st century is the equivalent of the plight faced by African Americans in the 19th. But I am suggesting that when the law is such that it forces people to cross state lines against their will, there is something wrong with the law. Theodore Parker died in the spring of 1860, and so he never saw the Civil War or the ultimate triumph of abolition. While he may have been disappointed not to see the end of slavery in the United States, Parker clearly took the long view of history. One of his most famous declarations was one he would have likely been proud to see adapted into the more usable language of the 20th century by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., a statement we have been hearing a lot of since November 5th. What Parker originally said, in the more complicated language of 1853, was this: "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Let us, in our day, be like Parker in helping make it so. The question for us today is, what practices can we adopt to help us take that long view, to hold on to that arc, and to do the bending?
The Reverend John Dietrich delivered a talk called Grounds for Hope in the Present Chaos on March 27th, 1932, which was at the peak of the Great Depression. Here's an excerpt. "I find in the restlessness of these times a basis of hope, not because of the restlessness itself, but because of what it means, the welling up in the human consciousness everywhere of a new life that demands a fuller and freer expression. The quiet, peaceful, and prosperous times have never been periods of real progress. It's in the stir and ferment of the restless ages which will not permit us to be lulled into complacent slumber that the best and highest of us in us is called forth. How has the world survived to this present time, if not by the virtue of the fact that underneath every great deluge, which has swept away the proud civilization of the past, seeds of life have survived and thus produced a succeeding and better age? Seeds of life have survived? Where? In the hearts of people who've refused to be dismayed, who've kept faith in the dark hours of disaster, who have heroically insisted on serving the best that they knew, even when such service seemed most futile. In the midst of every civilization that has died and rotted, there have been living, certain, chosen spirits who valiantly held aloft the banner of faith and hope and goodwill. And through these spirits, mankind has risen again in glory. In our hearts must germinate those seeds of a new and better conception of human life, which may survive the deluge that impends.
So a few years ago, I had the privilege of reading most of John Dietrich's talks for a database that we created for Meadville Lombard that's also available on our website. George Green has scanned all of his talks, among others. So I have been able to really understand and love the words that Dietrich shared with people more than 100 years ago. He was talking early on about birth control. He was talking about the fact that not only should women have the right to vote, but we need more women in politics. He was also well ahead of his time on talking about the fact that we tend to turn to punishment for crime without recognizing human psychology requires something different, which is treatment and other things, compassion. So he talked about all of those things. And at the time that he gave this address in 1932, 1 in 4 Americans did not have work. Nearly 9,000 banks had failed. And it was also the time that the Nazi Party was starting to rise politically in Germany under Adolf Hitler. Dietrich, in fact, had gone to Germany around this time and started to see some of that himself and talked quite a bit about it here. Yet he also talked about these seeds of life, even in the difficult time between the Great Depression and the Second World War. And indeed, the year that he delivered this talk, we had our first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from Arkansas. She beat 2 male opponents in 1932. It was also the same year Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly nonstop and solo across the Atlantic Ocean, giving us all a little seed of hope for what the future might have. It was also later that year when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected in a landslide, who of course set up a lot of what was able to transpire over the following decades through public policies. So again, Dietrich's message was, even in these darkest times, we are all able to bring seeds of life. I will be here in a couple weeks with some women in their 20s who have written essays for the Minnesota Women's Press that I edit, and they will be talking about where they're finding their own seeds to plant this coming year. So I just would ask that people take a moment today to think and reflect to yourself about what seeds you will plant in 2025.
Speaking here on October 1st, 1961, Carl Storm said this: "Just recently, the New York Times reported on the opening of the 7th annual convention of the organization We the People being held in Chicago. The major speaker at We the People convention was Robert Welsh, who, dwelling upon one of his major themes, told his audience that democracy is probably the worst of all possible governments, that democracy leads to mobocracy. That was palatable meat for the convention of We the People. We the People, assuming themselves to be the select elite who will determine and enforce the laws, divine, natural, and otherwise, dressed in the guise of anti-communism, it has all the earmarks of neo-fascism. No one who experienced the McCarthy period can dare to underrate the potential of a resurgent McCarthyism. There are, however, three aspects which are hopefully different in the present situation. One is the glare of publicity that has so quickly and so widely been turned upon the John Birch Society. Second, the John Birch Society has so far at least been unable to tie in with a personality leader, and more particularly with a personality leader in a position of political office and political power. Third, along with the resurgence of McCarthyism, there's indicated a countering revival of liberalism and respectable conservatism.
Ten years after we moved into this building, Carl Storm, our minister, spoke to us. This was 1961. And his group, as he knew it, were very familiar with McCarthyism, that whole morass that rose in the 50s. But he was making them aware of a new fascistic movement. And I think you can hear in what he lays out in that sermon just the clues you need to size up our current situation. In that sermon, he described secrecy in the leadership, one controlling figure, Robert B. Welch, who moved through different organizations secretly. You recognize the populist appeal of this group. They posed as absolutely right. They were patriotic people. The names of their groups were Christian Crusade, We the People, and the John Birch Society. They claimed enemies, perennially socialists and communists, which were the same thing, of course. And their claims and accusations were outlandish. The outlandishness, I'm not sure why, but it seemed to pull in popular appeal. They claimed that Eisenhower was a commie operative, and his brother was directing him. Carl Storm always spoke sermons that were educational and empowering. And I think here in this 1961 sermon, he does it again. He tells you all the facts you need to know, and then he lets you make the decisions, trusting that informed, you will hold to your values.
"2001 was not a positive year. The U.S. had inaugurated its first president elected by hanging chads. Said president announced his disinterest in the Kyoto Accords by March, rejecting the first international commitment to global climate goals. And my son lost his passport in Japan that summer. Many here in this room may remember the morning of September 11th, 2001. Here in Minnesota, it was a beautiful morning. As I was leaving for work, I deliberately turned off the radio because I didn't want any of that world interfering with the beauty that I was driving through. But by the time I came out of my first class teaching at St. Kate's that morning, I learned that the World Trade Towers, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania had seen the deaths of nearly 3,000 Americans by terrorist attacks. We remember the intense Islamophobia and its extension to everyone from West Asia, including people in this room. The Patriot Act soon followed. We've never traveled the same since then. Ultimately, the U.S. invaded Iraq based on false information, and the America First movement cohered through the evolving internet. Our own Reverend Dr. Kendyl Gibbons conducted a service of remembrance on September 16th, 2001.
She named no names or any countries in that entire service. Instead, she focused on the discipline of light. You'll now hear from Adele about this list of commitments that could strengthen our defense against becoming just like those we label enemies. Adele?
This is an editing from throughout Kendyl's sermon entitled "The Disciplines of Light, a Service of Remembrance." How can we, as we attempt to cope, to understand, how can we try not to become that which we struggle against? I think we keep ourselves from this by striving to stay true to the disciplines of light. The first thing is connection. As human beings, we are connected to each other, each and every one. The second is freedom, that every person has a right to their opinions, their work, their happiness, their choices, their life. The human society that makes our lives meaningful and gives us wisdom and comfort and happiness is utterly dependent upon trust, the third discipline of life, of light. The love of mercy is the fourth. Even when connection fails, when freedom and trust are vanquished, we are called upon to love mercy, to take pity on suffering, and to use our powers to heal wounds and to mend brokenness. Finally, the disciplines of life include an ongoing commitment to the possibility of peace. The disciplines of light are easy when the light is everywhere. To love mercy is easy when there's no costly loss to account. To keep connection is easy with those whose differences from ourselves are neither profound nor challenging. Trust comes readily to the privileged who've never been betrayed. The freedom whose opposite is slavery is easy to choose. The freedom whose opposite is safety and control is less alluring. To pledge oneself to peace in the abstract requires only sentiment. To pledge oneself to peace as an alternative to present anger and righteous vengeance is to choose that value over some of the most powerful impulses of our evolutionary heritage, fear and rage.
This week, as Project 2025 looms, a voter mandate of 1.6% declares that liberals are now the enemy within. We face censorship of real information, an even greater deluge of misinformation, mass deportations, and further defilements of civil liberties. We face divisions between neighbors, families, and colleagues. We are now all challenged to consider Kendyl's discipline of light. How can each of us, individually and collectively, navigate a new order in which Michelle Obama's mantra, "When they go low, we go high," can keep us on our path?
I now invite you to stand in body or in spirit as we sing "We Will Build a Land," which is number 121 in the gray hymnals, and the words will be on the screen.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves the inspired by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, inspired by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like water, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, inspired by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like water, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Hi, my name is Julie Stewart, and I serve on your Board of Trustees. This December, we've been hearing about the value of presence and mindfulness. This has gotten me thinking about my own experience with mindfulness practice, starting 6 years ago when I joined a secular meditation community. Over the months that followed, I found myself changing in small but positive ways, more open to new experiences, more able to handle stress and loss, and interestingly, more able to recognize that what I needed was usually right in front of me, not hidden away in some unreachable place. As I think about the coming political changes, I wonder how well my mindfulness practice will hold up in the face of actions and events that may feel profoundly wrong or even evil. Will I be able to approach even those situations with openness and curiosity? Will I be able to make a friend of my fears, as I've been taught to do? And then, will I be able to take the wise but strong action that's needed in response? I suspect I will be tested in the coming months as I have never been tested before, and perhaps we all will. And I am grateful to know that I have this community, that we will be facing these challenges together. First Unitarian Society is a free, independent, and self-governing humanist community. As members and friends of this community, we share our time and energy, our creativity, our imagination and vision, our talents, our skills, and our gifts of treasure. Your financial support is an important element in turning our shared vision into reality. If you use the QR code on the screen, it will take you to our donor page. Here you can contribute to our annual fund. You can also stop by the office or mail in your donation. You are invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. Thank you. Well, I have just a few announcements this morning. Education and family programming resumes on January 5th, next Sunday, with the return of OWL and our Community Posters for Change event. The Ethical Explorers will resume on January 12th. Please check out the information in the Friday update about foraging for our future, an ongoing program which will offer a communal self-reflection in preparation for what comes next for FUS. This will always be open to participation by everyone, but we also want to create a core cohort of folks who will commit to participating regularly. Please sign up by January 5th if you'd like to join this initiative. And after assembly, for those of you here in the building, please join us downstairs for conversation and our weekly mini meal. This week we have Moroccan stew, which is sweetly spiced chickpeas with tomato, lemon, and raisins with basmati rice and naan. This is gluten-free and vegan. We also have best gosh darn chicken drummies with au gratin potatoes, which is gluten-free. And to top it off, we have pumpkin chocolate chip cake, which is vegan and gluten-free. We have a donation jar and credit card reader for mini meal donations, or you can scan a QR code. So at this time, when Paul comes up to extinguish our chalice, please join me in speaking the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
Our closing words this morning are reading number 698 in the Gray Book. As the slide just mentioned, they were written by Wayne Arneson, but I feel like it is a message that is also sent our way by people like Theodore Parker, John Dietrich, Carl Storm, and Kendyl Gibbons. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.